the impact of chronic stress and how it affects the structure and function of your brain and how that adversely affects the rest of your body. Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Kristi Tompkins, and if you have not already, please be sure to subscribe to this channel so you can receive valuable information and recommendations on how to up-level your health and well-being, body, mind, and spirit, and many areas of your life. Today is a topic that I feel is incredibly imperative. Stress is one of those responses that is inevitable. We all feel stress. Stress is actually normal in small dosages or shorter periods of time. And stress is also subjective. It's subjective to how you perceive the stress, how you respond or react to stress. Some people can tolerate higher levels or higher amounts of stress, and other people cannot. So stress is really subjective. Nonetheless, the stress that you interpret and respond to, whether it's an actual threat or perceived stress, the perceived stress is actually the same. Your body doesn't know the difference. So when it comes to acute stress, as I just mentioned, it's normal. Our body is designed to kick in the sympathetic nervous system, which is part of the autonomic nervous system branch. The other branch is the parasympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic is what we know as the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. That's the heart rate increase, the blood flow to the muscles, our breathing gets shallow. We are prepared to fight or to run or to defend ourselves in some way. It's a protective mechanism, and it's completely normal. Our body is wired for that. It's actually created to defend itself. In the case of chronic stress, again, that can be subjective. Chronic stress can be hours, it could be days, weeks, months, years, even decades. So for the purpose of this video, let's say your stress is going on for weeks to months to years. Your body, what happens is your body kicks in the communication between the brain and the adrenal glands, also known as the HPA axis, the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal gland axis. That communication with the brain to the pituitary gland to the adrenal glands is constantly on. It's like leaving a light on or keeping your foot on the gas pedal. And maybe the brake too. So what happens over time is there is a response. There's that communication between the brain and the body. The brain itself is an organ, and it also receives blood flow and oxygen and nutrients. And it also gets affected just like any other organ in the body, your heart, your lungs, your skin, your muscles, your stomach. So the brain cells experience the detrimental effects of chronic stress, and therefore chronic cortisol release, chronic epinephrine or adrenaline, and many other markers or many other mediators and neurotransmitters that are secreted during these stressful situations. So what happens is the brain structure itself, it actually changes chronic stress. And I would say that the longer the stress, months, years, even decades, that it will more substantially affect the structure of the brain. And that's going to be mitigated or alleviated by certain factors, which I'll get into at the very end here. So when it comes to the structure of your brain can actually decrease in size. So things like the hippocampus, which is part of our brain, and that's involved in memory, that can actually, the volume of that can decrease in size. And so a lot of people that are under chronic stress have difficulty remembering things. They have difficulty remembering maybe short term, in some cases long term, things that you normally would know, names of people, how to do something you normally would be able to do gets affected as well. And what also happens is the prefrontal cortex in your brain is part of the brain that's important for executive functioning. It's important for rational thinking. It's involved in planning. It's basically kind of your orchestrator, like your leader. And what happens is that the volume of that gets turned down, and actually the volume in size gets turned down as well. So a lot of people experience that they're not able to focus, they're not able to concentrate, they're not able to focus on long-term goals or long-term planning because they're so overwhelmed by the current stress at hand, and they're not able to see other possibilities or other opportunities or other options for solving this this stress or this problem. And what also happens is there's something called the amygdala in the brain. This is essentially the first start of that sympathetic nervous system that gets kicked on. It's the inner alarm system that kind of like a siren that you hear. It's the inner alarm system that signals to the body there's a threat. And again, this could be an actual threat, where you're hiking and you see a mountain lion, or there's some sort of physical or verbal confrontation with somebody that's upsetting, or it could be just something that you're perceiving in your own mind, something that may not have happened, remembering something from the past, expecting the worst, and so forth. Your body responds in the same way. And so with the amygdala, that inner alarm system, that actually can increase in size, and it becomes overly sensitive. And so it's almost like you become overly sensitive and hypervigilant to things in your life that you normally wouldn't be, or things that shouldn't be that big of a deal. Now you're overreactive to things, hypervigilance, and you're expecting the worst and thinking about the worst and feeling like your existence and your presence is threatened in some way. And so again, the body doesn't know the difference. It's all based on your mind, your brain, and how you perceive that. And there's lots of other changes as well within the brain. So when it comes to the function of your brain, as I've mentioned a few moments ago, so there's an ongoing communication within the brain itself. I mean, with the brain cells and the neural networks and the neural communication within the brain, but of course there's also the brain and the nervous system. There's this communication with the brain and the body. Every organ in the body, the heart, the lungs, the skin, the muscles, the gastrointestinal system, your vision, your hearing, and many other organs in the body. And so what happens is there's this, like keeping the light on, having your foot on the gas pedal, there's this chronic HPA axis that's constantly overstimulated, other than maybe when you're sleeping. Although when we're chronically stressed, typically our sleep gets affected. That's usually kicked on as part of the parasympathetic nervous system, or the parasympathetic nervous system is the more predominant branch when we are resting, when we feel safe and peaceful and we're sleeping. But under chronic stress, it's hard to stay asleep. So there's this constant interruption waking up because your body is feeling like it's threatened all the time. So this HPA axis, hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal axis, gets dysregulated. It's not the normal acute stress, and then it goes back to normal. Acute stress goes back to normal. So a lot of animals do this. They're out in the wild. They're being chased by their predator. They escape. They get into their little cave, or they're into their safe place away from danger. And at some point, they revert back to the parasympathetic calm, rest. Usually they're not thinking about what just happened with the bear, the mountain lion, the cougar, whatever other predator, so that the body is able to adapt. With humans, we are a lot more complicated. We have stories, we have memories, we have triggers. And so a lot of times we are reliving things or thinking about things either based on the past, usually it's based on past conditioning, past programming, but we're also focused on what may or may not happen in the future. And also, we might be wired to think the worst. So the HPA axis gets dysregulated. It's not functioning normally. There's the surge of cortisol and epinephrine or adrenaline. And what can happen is that floods the body with the stress hormones, and that causes detrimental effects to the body. It breaks down the body, it degrades the body, and can lead to changes in cell structure, organ function, illness, disease, and lots of other potentially serious consequences from chronic stress. And what happens also is with the hypothalamus and the pituitary, it's this cascade. There's another cascade called the HPO axis, the hypothalamus pituitary ovarian axis, or hypothalamus pituitary testicular in men axis, where that communication that helps support production of reproductive hormones, estrogen, testosterone, progesterone. And of course, we know women typically produce a lot more estrogen, progesterone. Men typically produce a lot more testosterone. Both genders will produce all of those hormones. That gets interrupted, and that can lead to, for women, hormone related symptoms, menstrual irregularities, infertility, stopping having a period, early menopause. That's another video that I've done in the past. A whole assortment of reproductive, early termination of pregnancy, miscarriage, things like that. So there's heavy bleeding, lighter bleeding, lots of detrimental effects. With men, chronic stress, men obviously don't have menstrual periods, but that can lower the testosterone level for men and lead to low libido, low sex drive, decreased stamina, fatigue, depression, brain fog, decreased motivation, increased belly fat, all sorts of other symptoms for men as well. And so that gets affected, that gets dysregulated. And then there's something called the hypothalamus pituitary thyroid axis, where the communication between the brain and the thyroid gets dysregulated. So what happens is the thyroid hormone, which controls the metabolic rate, another fat burning hormone as we think about it, that it controls overall metabolism, heat production, energy, fuel for the body, helps support extracting the nutrients from our food so that we can survive and thrive. And what happens is that gets turned down. So the TSH either kicks up a little bit and it starts to communicate with the thyroid, but the thyroid's like, there's a threat, there's something serious going on. We're going to turn this down, because your body doesn't want to speed up metabolic rate and burn through fat reserves if it feels it's threatened. It wants to hold on to fat reserves. It wants to hold on to storage in case there's some sort of famine, starvation, or some sort of crisis happening. So your body is going to turn down the metabolic rate if it's perceiving a stress or a threat. So the thyroid typically lowers over time. What also happens with chronic stress is your neurotransmitters get affected. Neurotransmitters are produced in the brain and then also in different parts of the body, also your gut. And so the neurotransmitter balance that is regulated by many different functions in the body become imbalanced. Neurotransmitters like serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine. And so that rhythm or that pattern or that balance gets hijacked. And so a lot of people will experience dysregulation when it comes to your mood, dysregulation when it comes to your sleep, dysregulation when it comes to hunger and appetite, and things like feeling peaceful and safe, and things like being able to focus and concentrate and really stay on tasks, complete things, complete projects. And then also there's a connection between, and many other mood changes, maybe things like addiction, cravings, OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, lots of other potential mood symptoms from the neurotransmitter imbalance. And what can also happen is the um, the brain itself is wired for change and growth and evolution and being adaptable and adapting to change and being resilient to change. But what can happen over time is the communication, not only with the brain to the body, but the communication within the brain itself gets interrupted and it becomes weakened. So there's a term called neuroplasticity, which is your brain's ability to form new neural connections, new neural networks, and learn new things. And that gets and actually expand your awareness and cognitive function and ability to do many things, and that gets interrupted. And so the ability to learn and be adaptable and kind of roll with the punches, so to speak, that gets turned down. And because again, your body is focused on the immediate threat, it's not focused on expansion and growing and learning and personal development. It's not even on the radar. So when it comes to turning that off or turning that back, I shouldn't say turning it off, turning it back to normal, back to a normal regulation, because the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system, there's a dance, there's an oscillation, there's a rhythm. It's not like one is always kicked on and one is always kicked off. They're often happening at the same time, but typically if there's a threat, the sympathetic is takes precedence. It's the one that's in overdrive. And the parasympathetic doesn't have a long enough window of time to allow the body to rest and repair and restore and get back to homeostasis again. And so over time, over time that balance gets off. So there are ways to help regulate the nervous system. And this is a very long list. I'm only just going to cover a few today. One of the things that can help reset the nervous system and lower the volume of the chronic stress is to pause and become aware of what's actually happening. Is this if it's an actual stress or an actual threat, like running from a predator, or there's an actual encounter with someone, that's one thing. If it's something that's immediate, that's danger, that's your body's way of keeping you safe. If it's something else, like perceived stress, thinking about something from the past, remembering stories, worrying about something that may or may not happen, those things you have beyond your control. So one thing that you can do is you can stop and ask, is this an actual stress? Is this a real threat to my existence and my livelihood and my life and my safety? And often the answer is no. Often we can reframe that, we can shift it into looking at other possibilities. And sometimes you can't do that when you're under stress. So one of the things that I highly, highly, highly recommend is meditation, a meditation practice. The more it's like exercise or eating healthy, or strengthening a muscle, the more learning an instrument, the more you do this, the better it becomes. So having a consistent meditation practice, 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes a day, 30 minutes, 60 minutes, whatever you're able to do, there is a cumulative effect. You actually do become better at it. And these days, there's lots of different meditation apps. There's lots of things online, on social media, on YouTube. There's different teachers, lots and lots of different teachers out there that can help guide you through meditations. I'm a big believer in meditation. It has substantially changed my life. So engaging in a meditation, you don't have to be sitting on a mountaintop. You don't have to be on a yoga mat. It doesn't need to be, you have to burn incense. It doesn't need to be fancy. It could just simply be in your car during a lunch break. It could be in your home. It could be in your bed. It could be in your living room. It can be anywhere where you calm the brain waves, you slow them down so they're not in the high beta. They're a little bit more in the alpha, slower brain waves. Focus on your breathing and focus on either very minimal, or you can focus on the outcome that you want to have. the resolution of the stress, the resolution of the problem. And what that does is it puts you in a different state of mind, and it changes the functioning of your brain so that you are able to see new possibilities. That would be one thing. That's a whole other topic, the topic of meditation, because there's different types of meditation, but in itself, that is something that can help. Exercise often helps reframe, reshift physically, and then also emotionally, whether it's weight training, going for a walk, whatever it is you love to do. I'm not going to get into the different types because everybody's different. I love strength training. I love a little bit of aerobic conditioning. I also love hiking. And when I'm able to, I love swimming. So there are things that in yoga, there are things that I can do that help not only reinvigorate and kind of release a lot of the stress hormones, but it also opens up this portal so that I have new possibilities and new, I can receive new possibilities for solving whatever problem, even if it just means maybe being a little bit more insightful at what really is happening, the awareness, the consciousness piece, but also often I'll get ideas on how to solve this or how to reframe it. And then, of course, seeing a licensed psychotherapist or a trained professional who is a psychotherapist that you resonate with, that you connect with, that is helpful and supportive and validating for you. There's so many incredible therapists out there and therapeutic practices that you can do with your therapist that can help support healing of your brain, of your nervous system, and the rest of your body. And what often happens over time is naturally your sleep gets better. It becomes deeper. It becomes more restful because your body is no longer stressed. And a lot of times the brain itself is able to, the structure of your brain is able to change, and the functioning of your brain is able to change, and the functioning of your body changes over time. And the key here is consistency. Consistency. You have to be consistent with that because a lot of times the stress, especially chronic stress, doesn't just go away in a day, in a few days. It really takes a concerted effort and working with somebody that can help get your body back into rhythm and back into balance again, because the brain wants to heal. The brain is wired to heal, and the brain is capable of healing. And when that happens, everything changes. You change and your life changes as well. If this was enjoyable, if this was helpful, share this with a friend, family member, subscribe to this channel if you have not already, and we'll see you next time.